Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chisholm, and I'd like to give you a brief introduction to Fort Macon. Fort Macon is located in Bogue Bank near Atlanta Beach, North Carolina, and is strategically placed as part of the North Carolina coastal defense, particularly guarding the important assets of the Beaufort Inlet Harbor. Fort Macon was constructed during the 8-year period between 1826 and 1834 as part of the United States Coastal Defense Program, known as the Third System. According to the National Park Service, for Fort Pulaski, one of Fort Macon's sister forts, along with other famous forts such as Fort Sumter. These forts were built during a rather peaceful time, so you see fairly uniformity between these forts. The fort cost approximately $464,000 to build and used approximately 9.2 million bricks to build. Fort Macon is named after North Carolina statesman Nathaniel Macon. Nathaniel Macon, while serving in both the New Jersey and North Carolina militias during the Revolutionary War, and during that time when he returned home and was in the North Carolina militia, he was elected to the North Carolina General Assembly and eventually elected to the U.S. House of Representatives and served as a period as the Speaker of the House, though he has greatly gone into obscurity today, much to his liking. In the antebellum period prior to the Civil War, the fort was garrisoned and set for duty in December 1834, though saw little use other than the occasional troop housing, engineering units making repairs, and its caregiver. These caregivers were known as ordnance sergeants and were usually the only person there. During the Civil War, local troops without orders quickly seized the fort for the Confederate, and it became garrisoned by the state of North Carolina. Though, as Major General Ambrose Burnside came down the coastal region, taking over major cities such as New Bern, sent Brigadier General John G. Parke to conquer Morehead and Beaufort. After New Bern was conquered in mid-March 1862, Morehead and Beaufort were easily taken over in late March 1862, followed by the taking of Fort Macon in late April. Fort Macon was given 3 chances to surrender, but were to no prevail, and thus the federal troops laid siege on the fort, and it lasted 11 hours till it fell. And thus the fort remained under federal control for the remainder of the war. Following the Reconstruction movement, the fort served as a federal prison for 12 years until 1876, as the troops withdrew from the southern states. And in 1877, all the troops had been reassigned and only a caregiver left in place. During the next 20 or so years, the fort was rarely used again, but saw action again during the Spanish-American War, when in 1898 the 3rd North Carolina Volunteers were stationed there. This unit was a unique unit as it was an all-African-American unit and was led by an African-American, Colonel James Young. Interestingly, North Carolina was one of only 3 states that required such African-American commanding for African-American troops. After 1903, the fort had been abandoned, and several years later was put up for auction by the government, though at the bidding of North Carolina politicians was given to the state of North Carolina for the purpose of a second state park, along with the surrounding land. Though, due to bureaucracy and money problems, the state never began work until 1934, when the Civilian Conservation Corps government program to help rebuild the country following the Great Depression came in and aided North Carolina. Thus, 2 years later, Fort Macon opened as the first functioning state park in North Carolina. Though only a short 5 years later, the federal government leased back the land for use during coastal defense during World War II. The U.S. government occupied Fort Macon from December 1941 at the beginning of World War II to November 1944, and was eventually returned in October 1946 and resumed operation as a state park. Today, according to the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Department, Fort Macon is the most visited state park with over 1 million visitors. You can find history and ecology exhibits, guided tours of the fort, and nature trails along with beaches, hiking, fishing, and other activities. I also like to thank the Friends of Fort Macon for their continued support of Fort Macon and their gathered information on the district. Thank you. For my prop, I brought this book on the history of Fort Macon that I wrote back in 8th grade. And as you can also see back here, it is also very popular in the community with this photo that they have posted in the facility. I encourage you to visit it, and any guests that you have come down and take them down there, as the new visitor center opened 2 years ago now, I believe, and has lots of cool things to see.